Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you to everyone and welcome to everyone that's joining us tonight. Inshallah, tonight we have a very interesting topic and it's related to mental health. So it's understanding the challenges facing Muslim men in our community. And we're joined today by our dear brother Haisam Haidar, fellow psychologist and also president of Mission of Hope. So welcome, Haisam.
Thank you.
And we're also joined by our dear brother Omar Bensaidi, who's also with Mission of Hope and also a men's behaviour change specialist. So welcome, Omar. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
How are you both going?
Alhamdulillah, we're doing good.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. I mean, we'll go into a wide range of different topics, inshallah, from different perspectives.
Yep.
So whether it's mental health or, other challenges that are facing Muslim men. But let's just start, let's get the listeners to get a little bit of an understanding. What made you or what motivated you to work in the field of supporting Muslim men and families pretty much? I'll leave it up to you.
To be honest, for me, it started out as there was a need, there was a gap, and opportunity was there. And I guess, you get tired of waiting for people to step up, and it's time, I felt it was time to just take the opportunity and make a change. I think that's what it was for me.
Yeah. I guess with my background, I've always worked with young people, probably for the last decade. I've worked in youth homelessness services, domestic family violence services. Over the last 2 years, I'm more specifically working with men, kind of in the context of family violence. I guess the reason why I wanted to specifically work within our community is because I would see, professionally and personally, the impacts that a lot of the pressures that Muslim men are facing, fracturing their families, fracturing their communities, and knowing I had the kind of skill set and the background to support the families and ultimately support our community. It's something that I would be very happy to do every day.
Subhanallah, subhanallah. For me, I mean, initially when I got into psychology, the initial passion started, I think, in my early teen years. Subhanallah, I had a very close male relative in their 20s who died through suicide. So that for me was a big wake up call, because you see this person and the way that things seem normal. They've got very good family, very good life, things like that. And then subhanallah, when something like that happens, and then you see how the community reacts, and I think basically no one even knows that this person died through suicide, if you get what I mean.
Yeah. So you've always studied psych, you've always worked.
No, I started with something else. I started in medical science. I couldn't handle the blood. So but then I was like, what, I'm doing the electives in psych, and I'm enjoying it, and I've got this thing related to depression, anxiety, some sort of lived experience also with it. So subhanallah, it led me down towards it.
Same, because I wanted to become a cop, I wanted to become a detective. I did. You started off studying it, and then you choose a few electives like social psychology, and you're like, wow, this is amazing, this is really interesting, and you can just picture yourself doing this for a long time, a lot longer than other things, and so you just transferred and moved into it.
It's crazy what the path you set out. I mean, I wanted to become a lawyer. That's why
that's right.
When I first went into uni, I was studying law, and then it just so happened that I began working with young people, began noticing the impacts, and the traumatic impacts that were happening in their lives, and it was kind of like a natural progression. Like it just sort of happened.
Yeah. Subhanallah, it's all different journeys, but kind of leads to one similar, Ali, through that. I mean, the second thing I was going to get into a little bit before we go into specifics, just generally speaking, what are your thoughts about the most pressing challenges facing Muslim men in Australia today?
It's a can of worms. Look, I feel like, especially with Muslim men, there are general challenges that we're facing as men, and then also more specific challenges that we're facing as Muslim men. Generally, cost of living pressures, financial burdens and responsibilities, navigating gender, navigating what it means to be a man in this society in 2026. there's a lot of challenges and burdens around that. And then more specifically within our communities, things like racism, Islamophobia, migration issues, cultural differences. There's a range of general and specific pressures that we're all facing. I think one of the biggest one is that there really isn't, I guess you could say, a safe, supported space for Muslim men to kind of come together and speak about these things openly and honestly with each other. And that just kind of compounds the issue. You know?
Anything else? No.
No.
I'm joking.
What do you think?
But no, well, I agree. And look, I think for me, identity is a big one. When you touched on what it means to be a man, especially a Muslim man in Australian and Western society, I think that would be one of the biggest top, I think, issues for me that I see. The constant internal battle, the pressures, it seems to be the biggest thing on everyone's mind. And I think because of the political climate and just the nature of how everything's going in the West, it's becoming an internal battle for a lot of Muslim men. That's the way I see it. That's one of the biggest issues. And it ripples into and it infects other aspects of everyone's life, like the men's families, children, how they raise their children, how they choose to marry in their relationships, and it just infects a lot of different areas, different fields.
Definitely. I mean, the expectations, of men in general, and then when we go specifically towards Muslim men, have changed a lot. In particular over the last maybe decade or so, the expectations have changed, and when change happens, it's not just like expected of an 18-year-old guy to change, the 30-year-old, the 40-year-old, the 50-year-old. All of a sudden, the things that have been, they've been doing for whatever amount of years, or all the information that they've been fed, the way they've been brought up, the comments they've heard from people around them of what it means to be a man, all of a sudden start to change. And it starts creating a bit of I guess like issues in one way, or maybe even. But
you know what? There seems to be that argument of, is this good change or bad change? People have a lot more access to information, social media, technology. Like the fact that Islam is so readily accessible to the youth, to men, if they have a question about their faith or how to do something right or wrong, it's at the click of a button. But then again, that creates a flood of other issues. But there's that argument of is this the best time to be a man without, is this the best time because you got a lot more support, a lot more accessible needs met, or is it counterproductive as well because it's just too much?
So thoughts on that, Omar?
I mean, it's very true, like particularly in the sense that in 2026, at least with my generation, I remember growing up, access to social media just began when we got into high school. So for the current generation that are kind of being brought into the world through these channels, through these platforms, it's a very different world to even the one that I grew up in.
It is, and it's a lot more open. It's a lot more.
We're pretty young guys ourselves, but you can imagine even the younger generation, the spaces that they're trying to navigate. I'm sure we can kind of go into it a little bit more detail around online and social media and all that kind of stuff, but there needs to be a more focused effort and investment into spaces for young Muslim boys, young Muslim men to kind of navigate those issues around identity, racism, gender expectations, because otherwise they're going to find belonging elsewhere. They're going to find that connection somewhere else. And sometimes those places aren't the safest for them. Sometimes those places can actually do more harm to them, to their families, to our communities at a broader level.
I mean, like what you mentioned, subhanAllah, like for some people when they hear, us speaking, about the spaces and the safe spaces for the Muslim men, to get together, they might feel like it's cliche, or they might feel like, it's just copy pasting from other communities. But, what we're talking about here is, a space that's, culturally, religiously, adapted, appropriate. It doesn't have to be what they imagine in their mind is like sitting in a specific circle in almost like a therapy room or something.
Humming together.
Like subhanAllah, we're talking about things that will actually work, will actually get guys together to be there.
But do you feel like it's becoming more accepted as well? Like the stigma of mental health is slowly chipping away. Like the Islamic community, especially the Islamic men, are becoming more open to the idea of accessing support or reaching out, asking for help.
I think it's definitely like as Khalid is mentioning, there is always going to be that kind of rubber band reaction to to these types of initiatives or to these types of opportunities. I think, and that's why it's an issue that goes beyond even Muslim men. Men in general, the way that we're raised, the gender expectations that we have, or what we're taught from day one around how to manage our emotions, around how to bottle it up, not cry, toughen up. All of these messages that we're receiving from a young age, they feed into us as adults. And I think going back to what you mentioned with your friend who passed away by suicide, a majority of people who die from suicide, 3/4 of them are men. It just like really demonstrates to you that men would lead themselves down the road to killing themselves before they reach out for help, before they reach out for support, before they're willing to be vulnerable enough to say, I need someone to give me a hand here. So I think that's the point of these spaces for men. So they're not leading down roads where it leads to suicide, where it leads to poor mental health, where it leads to alcohol or drug addiction or family violence. All of those things kind of contribute to negative outcomes.
Yeah,
definitely. No, definitely. And I find that look when you're looking at, I guess, the community that we have today, where we have a lot of newly arrived migrants, we have some refugees, we have people that have come from countries where, I guess, the concept of mental health and is a luxury. You know what I mean? Like, it's not something like it's an everyday conversation.
Yep.
They come here and it's all over the place. It's confronting. It can be a bit that feeling of being vulnerable is uncomfortable, especially like you mentioned. If you're raised in a certain way, it's just that extra barrier. And I think trying to normalize that and trying to reshape that person's thinking, it may take some time if it ever gets there.
Yep.
But that's, I don't know. It's an interesting concept because, like, once it goes back to identity, always comes back to what does a person feel like they are, where they feel like they're at, and how do they feel like they fit in to a society or a place or a home or a community, for example. But
subhanAllah. I mean, I wish I had the stats. I don't have the stats, but broadly speaking, yes, first we point out the positives. There has been a reduction in that, mental health stigma, and there's been a pretty significant visible change in the way that our community, subhanAllah, it's just the last couple of years, even from when I got into studying psych over a decade ago or something until now, it's changed to the better. But in saying that, our uptake of mental health services, our access to mental health services, and the level of stigma still remains a lot higher than the general, wider, Australian population. So it's acknowledging that, we are making improvements. But, how do we keep moving this forward? Because what's taken place is good, but still not good enough, moving forward. Tayyib, you guys, you both mentioned, the different masculine roles and what we're brought up with and the expectations and things like that. Again, so I mean, for me personally, you look at it from personal experience. You've got males these days, you've still got pretty much the financial burden or the expectation in your family and from the community. On a deeper level, I'm pretty sure every couple is, unique and got their own experiences. And maybe with a lot of couples, myself included, the wife, for example, works and is happy to contribute. But there's still something in the back of your mind where it's like, you need to be the main financial provider.
Because the concept of the single parent home, does that even exist anymore? Like it's
with rent $1,000 a week.
Exactly.
How does it exist?
And that's another point. Rent. This expectation of men to provide a home for your family, for your wife, for your kids. It's there's this pressure to get a mortgage, to go down that haram path, or the riba, or the halal options. Even the halal options are incredibly expensive and limited. And all these expectations, once again, it creates that burden of stress and anxiety, and that carrying that burden as a male. Because Islamically, looking at it from an Islamic perspective, it's the male's responsibility to provide. And obviously, there are rules and limitations around that, understandably, but there's the expectation of that status anxiety almost like look at my neighbor, look at Khalid, my age, similar, and and look what he has, and look what I have, look what his wife has, look what my wife has. It's that comparison, and unfortunately, because of social media, it's on steroids now because everyone's accessing it all the time. Every second person starting a business, everyone's, and you know, they're successful, or they're showing success, and they're displaying success, and it's becoming the significant issues now that compile, and the amount of anxiety and stress and the challenges they take home to the marital bed after that, you know, the arguments, maybe not even arguments, but the resentment, you know, the quiet disappointment that somebody might have within their home or their partner because of so-and-so's car's not up to standard, or so-and-so's couch isn't the one that they want, or the holiday that they want. But these are real issues. And unfortunately, it digs away at a male's confidence, at his ability to provide. And even if, alhamdulillah, he's providing at an acceptable level, sometimes that's not even enough these days, especially living in Sydney, even in Australia, one of the most expensive cities in the world. The expectations are incredibly high. They are. We're starting quite high. You know, the threshold is quite difficult.
That's true. I mean, there's kind of two things happening at once here, which is the fact that, and going back to what you mentioned, you know, people's family makeup looks very different in 2026 than maybe the ones that our parents grew up in. And a lot of that isn't just cultural or religious. A lot of that is social, economic. You know, our parents, when they first came to Australia, house prices were maybe 3 to 5 times relative to their salary. Today in 2026, it's 12 times, right? Our parents probably, their generation, they came out of school, had a job, held that job until they retired. Job security does not look the same in 2026. People are constantly shifting careers. Women are becoming a lot more educated. They're becoming a lot more financially independent. They're a lot more capable of contributing to the family finances. And when you're raised in a household where there's very strict and rigid gender roles, it's hard to make sense of what this means for you as a man. You know, I'm supposed to be the provider. I'm supposed to be the protector. But does this make me less of a man now? And I think there's a really valuable study which is called the Man Box, which is essentially kind of looks at what these norms mean for us as men, how they box us in to this idea of you're either a provider, you're a protector. If you're not doing one of those things, it means you're less of a man. And that's where, like Haisam is mentioning, the issues then feed back into the house. They can lead to literally situations of abuse, violence, control, because men are struggling to make sense of what this family makeup looks like in 2026. And you couple that with what we just spoke about, with men's struggle to speak up and ask for help. They're bottling all of this. They're holding all of this on their shoulders as a massive burden. It can't be a healthy or happy or safe ending to a recipe like this, you know?
And look, correct me if I'm wrong, but look, I see it as looking at it from an Islamic perspective of how, you know, what is a man meant to be Islamically? And I feel like because of, once again, identity, people struggle. The men, especially in this society, they struggle to differentiate between two. Of Islamically, what does it mean to be a man? What are the male's responsibility, as opposed to the Western concept of what a male's responsibility is? And you know, having a foot in both worlds is confusing, stressful. It's emotionally, mentally exhausting as well to try to balance both. Because on one hand, you want to go to the office, you want to go for Friday drinks after work, stuff with a lot, all that stuff. But at the other end, you know, you want to maintain your deen and your Islam, and you want to maintain that side to you. And now, look, I feel like it's definitely a lot more acceptable. You know, now people's understanding of Islam is a lot better than what it was 5-10 years ago. But you know, it's this idea, this difficulty of having one foot in two worlds. It's something that I feel like it's going to take a lot more time for us to get a better grasp of how to manage that. Because you know, you can sit here and we can look at our fathers who, you know, didn't accumulate any generational wealth. There's nothing to hand over to their kids, so the kids are once again starting from scratch, as opposed to Western adults who have their parents' investment property and their actual property. So when they pass on, that significant fortune, that significant amount of money is going to get passed on to them. So they have a better starting off point. But Islamically, you look back and you go, all right, he did the right thing. He didn't borrow money. He didn't borrow interest. So he ended up renting for most of his life.
Yeah.
raised his family in a rented home,
Yeah.
just lived a normal life. But then you got the kids exposed to a lot more things nowadays and looking back and resenting their parents,
Yep.
going, you didn't provide enough for us. You didn't give us enough of a head start.
Mm-hmm.
And it's once in multi-generational issues that can come out of that as well. But there's a real issues. There's a legitimate things that are happening, unfortunately,
Yeah.
in our community.
Definitely. I mean, we spoke about the more traditional role, like, the financial provider, the protector. But then you've also got, all these additional roles that maybe new roles, that men aren't, men over 35 or 40 haven't really been even like trained or exposed to how it's supposed to be. Like, they got to be emotionally available. Something that maybe they didn't see their father's model.
So true.
They got to be, if they're married, they got to be, engaged, with their wife. They got to be engaged parents. They got to be, within the community also. They got to be successful professionals. So you couple all of that, and then what happens is, you've got this average guy who's, subhanallah, addressing all these things at an acceptable level, but then, falling, maybe they're an excellent, community member, but then professionally their work isn't really as taking off, or they don't have their own company. They start to see that puts them down, although in other aspects they might be so good. They're very successful at work, but then the back of their mind, the extreme guilt related to like how available am I to my family, and maybe they've taken the perspective of to be a good man these days, it's to be available all the time to your family, accessible at all times. So you've got all these different things that, and then to top it all off, it's like, not many spaces to go and share it. And I'll give it like a real life example. So, me and a couple of the guys around us, subhanAllah, we started to play like paddle, recently. And it's become,
paddle ball.
Very similar to tennis. It's a big thing. So we try to go like at least, once a week or twice a week sometimes. All of a sudden we're, and it's not cheap too. But the idea behind it, and I realized it's not paddle itself. It's that social element, and it's also the element that it's like a group of, 6 guys going, and when you're playing, you're discussing little things, you're talking about stuff. If you don't got it available to you at a workplace, then, you start to, for someone who'd, previously never wanted to go out, with, friends or anything, I'm just a family guy completely. All of a sudden you're like, I do need that space. And it'll be very good for us, inshallah, to come up with a space that we can get men, to comfortably access and to speak about these things.
You're right, because look, there's a lot of investment in youth, I see, in our community, mashallah, which is good, which is definitely needed. But when people grow up, they get married, time is limited, and the support for men is actually very limited, and especially from an Islamic perspective, because it means a lot of people have to go out and find their own groups, their own circles. They have to do their own things. But and on that note, look, when we're talking about the way that people cope and people try to manage these stresses and the challenges, we're seeing a significant rise in gym culture, especially in an Islamic perspective, which is, good. It's a double-edged sword. You're seeing a significant amount of youth and men, spend a significant amount of time at the gym trying to, perfect, their health. Well, let's say it's their health.
Physique.
Let's go physique.
Body image.
Body image. And then you develop, we're seeing as well a significant rise in body dysmorphia in men, which is something we've never seen, in the past decade. So it's a slow increase, in these issues that are definitely adding on to a lot of this stuff. And you see, we congratulate, we see it's great that we got men going to the gym, exercising, looking after themselves, but then they develop, these maladaptive habits, the ones where they take it too far, or they start neglecting their families because they have to prioritize the gym. So they go from work to gym for 2 hours, they come home, they're winding down, doing their shakes and mabarif shul, and then by the time the kids are in bed, and they do it all over again the next day. And it's about developing habits. Yes, like you got your pickleball once a week, fantastic. Yeah. But it's about doing it in a healthy way, in a limited way that is reasonable and not excessive. Because you see, you look at, go to Auburn, Greenacre, Lakemba, 11, 12 o'clock at night, you see the men,
the cafes,
the cafes pumping. It's Tuesday, Wednesday night, and you think to yourself, why aren't you at home with your families, bro? But then again, look, obviously we're not here to judge or criticize, but these are issues that compound. You know, these are men that go to work, they're exhausted, they wanna release.
Yeah.
They go hang out with their mates, but it's got to be limited. It's got to be within reason, because people in our community are taking things too far. People in our community are, you know, pushing things, you know, a bit out of control, unfortunately. But that's some of the issues that we're seeing as well.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely. I mean, you're bringing it up. I mean, it's an interesting trend around expectations of men becoming more emotionally present, emotionally aware of their partner's needs, and I think a lot of that speaks to what I was referring to earlier about the man box. We've got a very, very contained idea of what it means to be a man.
Yeah.
And it's like the moment you step out of that box, you're punished. You know, you're either punished by your family, by your community, by society at large. It takes real courage and bravery to kind of, I guess, expand the idea of what it means to be a man. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Men that we're talking about here at one point in time were boys. They were young boys who were given certain messages, certain ideas, certain concepts of what it means to end up becoming a man. And those ideas mean that, you know, as a man, you shouldn't be emotionally present. As a man, you should be, the only way you can express your emotions is if you're angry, you know, and we don't have a language for men, have a language to express when we feel sad or when we're scared or when we're feeling rejected or in fear or disappointed. And so a lot of that comes out as anger or stress. I think we need to really support men, especially within our community, Muslim men, to kind of broaden their vocabulary of the range of emotions that you experience. We're also all humans at the end of the day. You know, we're all human, male, woman. At the bottom of it all, we're all human, and we experience the same range of emotions.
So true. Yeah.
You know? But society and our culture is containing that range for us, and we're experiencing the negative impacts of that. So we really need to support each other to kind of have a broader language and understanding of our emotions, because that's the only way.
I agree, absolutely. But the sense of vulnerability, being vulnerable, it's hard, and there's no denying that, especially for a male. You mentioned, you know, the two boxes. You're looking at anything outside of that. You feel, you know, even as a male, crying, you know, showing some sense of emotion. Like it's slowly becoming more normalized. It's become more accepted, but there's still, I think, you know, from a Middle Eastern perspective or your South Asian perspective, like there's still that need to be the strength, the protector, the provider. You need that sense of strength, and strength is not crying. You know, but Islamically, it's completely different. It is. It's, you know, showing emotion is incredibly welcomed as a male. But these are Western concepts that are sneaking into what it means, into our culture, into our religion, and people are conflating the two. So it's the lack of education, but also the conflated messaging that our youth and the men are getting in society it's becoming more challenging and more difficult to sift through. But looking at, you know, we got these amazing podcasters like, you know, Andrew Tate and Clavicle and Mabarif Shaw and that Shash psychologist, what's his name? Jordan Peterson, right? these people, which are, you know, I use that lightly, but he's, you know, they're messaging about going back, and this is what I think resonates a lot with the men from these people. The messages that they send out into the world is that, you know, being a male in today's society is under threat. This is the messaging that these people are putting out into the community, and people in the community are resonating with that. The question is why? Why are members in the community resonating with that messaging? Why is it? Because, you know, are we feeling emasculated? Are men in our community feeling that things are getting taken away from them? Their voice has been taken away from them. You know, we see the men's behavior change, right? We're looking at some of the people that are coming through that. You're looking at I don't know what the word is, dislike, or their challenges with women, their difficulties with women have shaped their worldview, has shifted the way they see what it means to be a male, especially going through the legal system in Australia.
Their contempt for like
contempt. Thank you. Yeah. So it's unfortunate because, you know, all these things are conflating, and they're getting, you know, really, really mixed messaging and trying to shape, I guess, the youth in a certain way from an Islamic side, the Islamic messaging. I feel like at times it's going good, but at the other times it's becoming more difficult as well, because the youth are, they got, once again, the foot in both worlds. They got their, YouTube, or sorry, not, the TikTok and
Yeah.
Snapchat and
Yeah.
blah, blah, Twitch and all that. And on the other end, I've got, the youth nights at the mosque, which is once a week.
Yeah.
Which one's going to be more influential?
Mm-hmm.
It's understandable, but yeah, I don't know. But that's,
No, it's a good point. I mean, look, at the end of the day, and like we started this conversation around Muslim men navigating their identity,
Yeah.
especially young Muslim men trying to navigate their identity in what is almost like a completely online world.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you're whatever religion, whatever background. As a young person, you have a desire and a need to feel connection, to feel belonging. If you're not going to be feeling that belonging amongst people that are close to you, amongst your friends, amongst your family, amongst your community, you're going to find that sense of belonging elsewhere. Sometimes that means in spaces that are online that aren't actually healthy for them. And the challenge is, a lot of these spaces online, they mix a sense of self-development and self-improvement with really negative ideas around what it means to be a man, around what women are, who women are to you. And so as a young person, you're not going to be able to differentiate between, okay, this is positive and maybe this isn't positive. You're taking it all in as a whole. So, I mean, as well, these spaces, they offer a lot of these young boys a very simple answer to very complex problems in the world.
Yeah.
When you're 12, 13, 14, you don't have the awareness to understand these big issues going on in the world. So some guy that pops up on a 30-minute reel, a 30-second reel,
that's right.
and gives you a very simple, certain, clear answer,
Yeah.
you're going to swallow that up and take that as a truth.
Yep.
And that's the unfortunate reality that a lot of young men are facing.
Very
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. It's all about influencers and who's
Status.
got a better reach and who's trending.
Yep.
And
But this is warned in our religion, right? The people the company you keep.
yeah.
This was warned. This is a warning in Islam, is that look at the company you keep, look at the people you talk to, the influences that you take from. Like this is something that is a reality, and it's a warning. What you see on YouTube and TikTok and all these people that you follow, this is, be mindful of what your children are looking at.
Yeah.
Because it will impact their view, their worldview. It will change. Especially the youth, there is such a vulnerable state in their life.
Yeah.
Their worldview is so significantly shaped, so easily shaped. So it's important, especially at that age, but once again, this comes back to that responsibility of the father and the mother who are working, long shifts at work, coming home exhausted, trying to maintain that family life. That is that extra duty of raising your kids in the Islamic way, raising the kids in a halal way. Keep an eye on your kids.
Yep.
What used to be the old school way of, mum stays home, looks after the kids, dad goes to work. But now both parents most likely are at work. Both parents come home tired, exhausted, and they're trying to balance a family. They're trying to look at the real challenges. Yeah. And raise your children in Islamic values and Islamic way. It's hard. It's very, very difficult. Yeah. And we're not trying to take that away from, the people listening here. It's a reality. We know that and we accept that. But it means that something's got to shift in order to maintain those values in your home, to protect your kids, to protect their kids, inshallah. Yeah. So it's
Subhanallah. Just for us to summarize a little bit on just this topic before we move on. So in terms of, Muslim men and marriage, fatherhood, family responsibility, I'll go to Haisam again first, and then we'll finish it off with Omar, inshallah, before moving on. So how can men navigate, those feelings of inadequacy when they feel like they're not meeting expectations?
Reach out, talk to people. But that would be the biggest thing, is that talk to someone, seek professional help. I know professional help is expensive, and that's a reality of, once again, one of the most expensive cities in the world. But there are free services, there are supports, there are groups, there's the LMA for sure. There's but turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, prayer. Look, I think one of the things that we see as well is that sometimes, I might get hated for this, but we overcomplicate things. There are times that we do overcomplicate our lives. If we stick to the prescribed text, we stick to the path Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, put out for us, then life becomes a little bit more simple, a little bit more manageable. It just becomes, we don't need to overcomplicate it with all the challenges, that we have in our, like, not the challenges, but all the influences that we have in our lives.
Yep.
We can simplify, pull back. You don't have to spend that significant amount of money on that car. You don't have to, alhamdulillah, if you got a car, that's great. But it's that, once again, it's that identity, it's the self-talk, it's it's how you make peace with it in yourself. That is where it becomes the biggest one.
And Omar?
I mean, just off the back of what Haisam is saying, I think it's very simple. If you're feeling sick, you go to a doctor. If your car's broken down, you go to a mechanic.
Yeah.
If you're feeling not well mentally, emotionally, you're going to need to seek help from that. And for some men, it's difficult to go professionally and get that help, but it can be informal help. It could be these spaces that we're talking about. It could be going out and playing paddle with your mates. I think a big thing about men is we've isolated ourselves. Even as a man, you can be amongst a lot of people and no one knows what's going on for you.
Yeah.
You see men who are sitting in the mosque, you see them every single day.
Absolutely.
You don't know what's going on in their home.
Apart from salam alaikum.
You don't know what's going on in their marriage. You don't know what's happening with their children. So we're around each other always, but we're not very present to each other.
Very true.
You know, and I think that's what men really need to kind of try to accept. It's difficult because we haven't been brought up to think in this way, but to be gentle to each other as men. Not every guy that you see is your enemy. Not every guy you see is ready to get into conflict with you. You don't know what that guy standing right next to you in Salah, in the mosque, is going for at that moment. But yet we could be standing with him days and days and weeks and have no clue. So I really want to emphasize that kind of connection is really valuable.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, like men, subhanAllah, still, like the research shows that, men still, some of them, struggle to seek that professional help. We know it's confounded within our community too, but subhanAllah, like what you both mentioned, it just takes that initial step. It seems... it could be uncomfortable. Like that's the reality of it, right? Like it's something you're not used to. I used to always put my perspective, take the perspective of the client when it's an initial assessment. If it's like an Arabic speaking guy, in the back of my mind, look, this could be the first time. I think in some intakes we had, have you accessed, mental health services before? Just to get that, because that if they haven't, and that question's like, ticked off in that way, then there's a lot going through their mind while they're waiting in that room. It becomes as if you're waiting for like, an important blood test or something like that. Like it could be uncomfortable, but the moment you go, inshallah, and you realize that, it's so normal. It's like how we're talking now, but with more obviously professional guidance and stuff. It doesn't signify that you're weak as a man.
Absolutely.
Doesn't signify that you're weak in faith. Definitely doesn't do that. It doesn't need you to be at a crisis point to access these services. This isn't just for like, the extreme conditions, right? This is like, certain stresses, adversities that you're facing. Sometimes it's like, subhanAllah, both of you were mentioning points, and all I was thinking about was, just getting a different understanding of what it means to be grateful in Islam, for example, right? Like it just takes someone to tell you, okay, look at what it actually means to be grateful, what because we've got all these values, but what do they actually mean?
That's right.
When you do that on a deeper level, it changes things. So subhanAllah, like we do encourage everyone, inshallah, like, don't think of, mental health services as just, something for people with extreme, mental health illnesses, for example.
Normalizing it is true. But also don't walk away after rejection, or a bad session, or uncomfortable, awkward interaction with a brother in the mosque. Try again. Don't just walk away after one. Try again. Keep trying until you find that right connection, because it is out there. That connection is there. That support is there. The right person is there. Just keep trying. Inshallah, you'll get there. Yeah.
And just on that point, I think, again, going back to the whole question around like masculinity and being a man, we usually think that we need to reach a crisis point. We need to reach rock bottom before you feel justified to ask for help. Now I can be worth asking for help because now I've got nothing left. When you get to that point, so many things have fallen apart.
That's right.
And again, even our religion always teaches us that, prevention is always better than cure. Being proactive.
Yeah.
Don't let it reach a point where things have destroyed themselves so much that now you're saying, hey, I need help. I need a hand. Someone help me out. Just be proactive.
Yeah.
Well said.
And Omar, I mean, you've done quite a bit of work in behavior change. For someone that's listening to this, whether it's now or later on, inshallah, how does untreated, like mental health issues, for example, contribute to harmful behaviors?
It's such a massive impact. If, and it's going back to, there's a lot of analogies going back to, if you were sick, if you knew that you had to follow up with your doctor about a blood test and you kept holding it off and you kept holding it off and you kept holding it off, if you end up going to the doctor or you have to go to the hospital, who's really to blame? Are you going to blame the doctor? Are you going to be blaming the receptionist? You've let yourself get to that point. And going back to what I just said about prevention being better than cure, when something is not treated, when something is not addressed, it doesn't resolve the issue. It doesn't make it go away. If anything, it makes the issue worse. And so I think the biggest difficulty, especially within our community, is there's so much stigma around even recognizing that you need treatment, that something needs to be addressed. And so we kind of try to hide ourselves in a whole heap of shame and guilt, right? But that just makes things worse.
Absolutely.
And particularly within my work, working with men who are using violence in their own homes, they didn't start using violence or abuse or control overnight. These things bottled up. They didn't want to speak to anyone about it. They didn't want to get help about it. They left a lot of these things untreated, and it resulted in them using very harmful ways to try to address these problems. But I mean, look, Haisam, you're a psychologist as well. What happens with untreated mental health?
Oh yeah. No, it like you said, like it does. It bottles up, builds up, and there's something that breaks. There's got always something that breaks, and it's usually, it comes at a significant cost, mentally, emotionally, financially, physically, everything. Like it's something, a point nobody wants to reach, but it does happen because, like we were talking about, everyone's life is complicated, life is busy, life is hard. But if we don't stop, have that self-awareness, develop that sense of gratitude, if we don't develop these strategies, these coping strategies, it's very simple. They really are. Like I know we like I said, we overcomplicate things. 5 minutes of khushu' or mindfulness or gratitude or thanks makes such a significant difference neurologically in the brain. Like it literally rewires how your brain starts to see the world. The more negative thinking, the more negativity, the more you focus on the stress, the challenges, the anxiety, the issues, your brain, that's all it's going to see. Your mind will only see the negative. If you reframe for even a few minutes a day, and inshallah eventually that will become a few hours a day, it's enough to rewire how your brain sees the world. And that is something that we easily forget, but it's such an easy fix. It's something that we can do.
It's we really, especially within our community, we need to rethink, reimagine what seeking help means to us. And I do believe strongly that seeking help as a Muslim man, it's a manner. Because your well-being as a husband, as a father, as a man in this community, it's not just about you. It's about everyone that's connected to you. It's about your wife. It's about your children. It's about your parents. It's about your siblings. So you need to maintain that amana. And that means by holding that amana, you need to seek help when you need it too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're bottling things up and, things are just getting worse and worse and worse, and that, divorce rates, for example, are so high. You're a married guy with 2, 3, whatever children, and you're not seeking help. You pretty much already know where this is heading towards, right? Like, and it's almost like, you're happy to, hold the hand off that journey and just walk down that road. But, why wait till the end of, why wait till the end, pretty much start to seek help, see what changes you can make, address those issues that you're facing, address those thoughts that, cross your mind, things like that. And inshallah, that gives you a much better chance of a probably better outcome. in terms of
100%.
relationships
Yeah.
and
100%.
be it so.
But even trying, just try.
Yeah.
Like, so imagine the hasanat you're getting just for trying, just for changing your thinking. A thought,
Yeah.
just a thought.
It's a little thing. Like
Yeah.
I do it now. We've been conditioned with the very, very, very cliche one, right?
Yeah.
Men, boys don't cry, it's things like that. So I've got like a 3.5 year old boy, and when I see him in settings, if he's playing, his little whatever soccer on Saturday mornings, or he's with his female cousins around his same age, and they're walking around, and then he starts crying, and the first instinct for me is like, don't cry, you're a boy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the girls are not crying, they're telling you
Yeah.
like what's going on over there. But it's just being aware. Like I've done it once, and then I'm like, Khaled, what was that?
Yeah.
That's not.
That's so true.
That's something that's just automatic. So I'm more aware of it. Every time that thought crosses my mind, I'm like, no, take a step back. Let's readdress how we're gonna speak to the little kid.
Well, it's not about being. It's never about being perfect.
Yeah.
If you're able, what's better than being perfect is being able to correct yourself and recognize, catch yourself. This is where I slipped up. This is what I'm going to do differently. This is what I'm going to change. Being perfect is a hopeless goal, but being committed to change, being committed to learning, that's really what it's about.
Alhamdulillah. Let's move on a little.
Yeah,
inshallah, let's talk about a topic that you both do quite a bit of work in, or is a focus of Mission of Hope. And inshallah, it was something that we worked along the lines of at the LMA, and we want to, really get back into it, inshallah, too. So alcohol and other drugs. So I'll start with you, Haisam. Yep. What factors are placing some Muslim men at risk of, substance misuse, despite the religious prohibitions?
Yes.
Like we know that it's haram,
Yep.
but we see it so, dare I say, prevalent? Can I use the word prevalent?
Yeah,
or
I would
what?
say, it's almost, it's not only, I would say prevalent, but also, discreetly accepted in a way, because it's more normalized now, unfortunately. But look, I feel like it goes back to the earlier conversation of identity. I feel like that's just the way I see it is having a foot in both worlds, trying to fit into the Western culture, having alcohol and drugs become such a norm in society. There's been, I don't know if you guys have been aware, like there's been a lot of recent social media spike in how this generation, whatever this generation is, generation AI, whatever, this generation is shifting away from clubbing and drugs and alcohol and moving more towards the fitness and health, side of things. But for some reason, I feel like that's not our community. I feel like that's not we haven't reached that point yet. We're still back there where drugs, alcohol, late nights, doing all this stuff it's still prevalent in the society. It's becoming such an issue, because I feel like when we're talking about men seeking help or trying to get support, unfortunately, they don't. They try to self-medicate. They rather self-medicate, and unfortunately, because of that, we see a spiraling in addiction, in habits, in family breakdowns. But obviously, understandably, there are many, many, many factors. But that seems to be, to me, one of the biggest ones. But
yeah, look, I think as a community, we have this perception that if you're Muslim, because Islam says don't do alcohol and drugs, that's it, we're protected.
Yeah,
we're all good. Drug and alcohol will not affect us. So that what happens is when drug and alcohol use is affecting some of our brothers, some of our cousins, some of our uncles, we don't want to address it. We want to act as if it doesn't exist. Yeah. And this just creates a vicious cycle. The shame leads to you keeping things secret. The secrecy leads to you staying isolated. That isolation just leads to more alcohol and drug use. And we just keep perpetuating this vicious cycle for Muslim men, because we keep making the alcohol and drug use the problem, the issue. The alcohol and drug use is literally the tip of the iceberg. When you see an iceberg, you're just seeing the top of it. Underneath that, it's not about why are you drinking, why are you smoking, why are you doing this, why are you doing that. What happened to lead you to think that doing those things will address your problems, will help you get through whatever you're getting through. We need to start asking different questions, especially within our community, about why Muslim men are using alcohol and drugs. Because that's the only way we can open up, another path to them becoming more aware of why they're using. And then it's only through that they're they can recognize, okay, this is the impact that my alcohol and drug use is having on my family, on my children, on my wife, on my wider community. But we kind of need to get there and move away from a very, very shame-based, secrecy, stigma-driven idea of addiction, and more towards an empathetic, understanding, considerate, view of using substances.
Yeah. No, subhanAllah, that was one thing I was gonna, speak about, how we can respond, compassionately as a community, to people, who are using drug and alcohol or have an issue or misuse, of substances. At the same time, obviously we're no, at no point do we want to normalize these behaviors.
No.
We want to make sure that there is some sort of accountability attached to it. But at the same time, we're not here to shame. We're not here to stigmatize. We're here to help. We're here to make, real positive change, inshallah. Omar, let's just, because we're talking about men and relationships and things like that. So substance misuse, some of the guys that are out there that might be contemplating, use or being offered, or, it's trending in a certain circle. What kind of impact do you feel like it's got on like family relationships, parenting? And I know we're just at a more,
it's
surface level, but
it's just continuing what we were just saying. When that becomes your outlet to cope with your emotions, and going back to what we were speaking about earlier, men are not given the space, the capacity to express their emotions healthily. Outside of anger, there's no other legitimate or genuine emotion that a man can express. And when you do that to men, you're really pigeonholing the range of emotions that they're feeling. We're all humans at the end of the day, like I said. As men, and I'm sure you can all agree here, anger is not the only emotion that we feel. So then why is anger the only way we can express all the other emotions of sadness and grief and fear and disappointment and rejection? It just literally pushes us further and further into a pigeonhole where we start to, in a really negative way, accept, maybe just using alcohol, using these drugs can be an escape from all of this pressure. It can be an escape from me having to deal with a lot of these emotions. And particularly in the context of families, if men, especially within our community, are not given the skills and the support to navigate family, relationships, then alcohol and drug use becomes an easy outlet. It's not too far-fetched to then say, once a man is experiencing all these pressures and all these burdens, that then this becomes a very natural coping mechanism for them to lead down. Not to condone it, of course, but to understand that when you get 1 + 1, it's going to equal 2 all the time.
And
do you feel like our community has a foundation already? Because we see significant use of cigarettes, for example. It's so normalized overseas, the hashish. The shisha. The shisha.
Both, really.
Yeah, both. Yeah. The shisha is it's so normalized. It's so accepted everywhere you go that it's almost like a gateway to anything else, because it's like, oh well, if we make an exception for this, people smoke all the time, and oh yeah, I know it's bad for me, but alhamdulillah, inshallah this, inshallah that, but then people look at their parents and they smoke, and then they're like, oh well, look, that's okay for them. This should be alright for me. Like it's almost like it almost opens up that gateway. And I know there's research on the gateway drug and all that, blah blah blah. Ignore that for a minute, but you get my point. It's but that's kind of where I see it in our community. It's because I see the normalization, because smoking shisha, man, the things that it does to your lungs, it's horrible. Like it's not a normal healthy thing. It's not something that our body takes to naturally. It's like you have to force it. It's almost self-harm in a way. It is.
It really is.
And but people put themselves through that for what? For connection. For friendship, for socializing, for fit in, Allahu alam. But these things that they do, and then eventually opens up for other things, unfortunately. And addiction is real. Our body becomes addicted. It starts craving. It starts desiring it. It stops functioning until we give it. And this is something that, once again, it's the build up that we neglect. But
Look, our body gets addicted maybe a lot quicker than what we think it does.
That's so true.
And that's one of the main things that, hopefully we can get people, inshallah, to understand. The addiction doesn't happen after I don't know, months and months or whatever of use. It's a lot quicker, and for each person it's different, right?
Yeah.
So with some people it might be just whatever, a couple times, and they think it's not going to be an issue, and it is.
My brother did it for how many years? Casual smoker or casual this or casual that. No, it's not real, man. Like for you, Allahu Alam.
And there is we're talking about this topic because there is a drug use issue.
Yes.
And it could be tied to a lot of things, and one of them is what we're talking about what it means to be a male, about identity. You see a lot of the younger boys in their early to late teenage years, in the area, that look up to specific figures that aren't good role models, and then or they go to certain places, and all of a sudden things like cocaine, it's prevalent. Like cocaine use among the community, although you don't see it when you're walking around or whatever, but it's prevalent. And, as a therapist, as someone, who, speaks to a lot of people, gets, a lot of behind the scenes stuff. It's so common.
It is.
If there were, if people were to actually do a survey and put the actual, the real honest responses on it, you'd be shocked as a community, about the prevalence of things such as cocaine. Within males.
I'm actually interested to see what's going to happen when they do eventually legalize marijuana. Which I think it will happen.
Yeah, I think Mins was passing something.
I'm curious.
Medical marijuana. Yeah.
Can I throw in a question here?
Yeah, sure.
If you guys don't mind, just repeat it on the broadcast so people hear it. Khalid.
Yep. We're just getting a question.
There are some out there that will say, in particular marijuana, they'll use it and say it's
medicinal.
It helps my mental health. It helps my These aren't people that are just taking it for the sake of.
That's right.
It slows down. I don't hear the noises. I don't have to. Maybe comment on that a little bit in what
the difference.
I suppose not the difference, but is that in and of itself a gateway and something to worry about or to think about?
I'll just repeat the question. So just about marijuana and people that say it helps with our mental health.
Yeah.
I'll put it over to you,
Sure.
Haisam, to start with it.
Look, I think, if it's been prescribed, there's a reason, I would say. I know people take advantage of the prescription system, and I know some doctors are too happy to sign away the prescript. But look, there's definitely research. There's definitely significant research. And the type of marijuana that is used for medicinal purposes is a lot different than the stuff you would get in, wrong places. So it's monitored, but it's also, there is research that there are benefits, mental health benefits, and there's a significant Australia is I think one of the countries leading the way for the use of psychedelic drugs in trauma, trauma counseling. And I know it's huge in the States as well right now. And you got people doing it illegally, ayahuasca and all that stuff. There's a lot of research into the benefits, but if it's done safely, correctly, monitored, there are medicinal benefits, yes.
As a medicine.
As a medicine. But if you're self-medicating...
prescribed medicine, sorry, I should have said that.
Yes, prescribed. Yeah. It is, but self-medicating this is where it becomes a problem. When you are trying to, for example, you can't sleep. You're having sleep issues, and you say smoking helps me sleep. That's you self-medicating. That's you not addressing, like Omar was saying, the core root of the issue. You're not addressing what's really happening for you. You're taking the easy way out. We call these maladaptive coping strategies. Yes, they work, but at what cost?
Yeah.
What's the eventual, long-term damage the harm that's going to come from it?
Yeah.
Instead of doing a little bit of extra work to actually create a healthy sleep habit or sleep hygiene or routine, or doing things, eventually the right way. But if you have underlying significant medical issues or health issues, definitely that's a separate issue. But if you're self-medicating, I think that's what we're talking about. We're talking about drug addiction. But does medicinal use lead to is it like potentially a gateway drug? I don't know. It's a good question.
Ask all the people that are addicted to painkilling medication.
Yeah, well, opioids. Oh my god, no. Yeah, opioids for sure. Those are on another level. But But the strands, even opioids, are different types of medication, and those are slowly getting a little bit more manageable. But yeah, look, I honestly don't. With medicinal, I'm sure it's monitored a lot better than what it would be. But if somebody gets a prescription and a script, and then they go out looking because the doctor says that's enough, and then they go out to the streets and they try to find their own stuff, that's a possibility. Yes.
The doctor is the gateway. No, but honestly, like I think more so in this context, I'm not a healthcare professional, I'm not a doctor or anything like that.
Yes,
but,
disclaimer, of course.
This is not medical advice. But genuinely, I think using substances in general as a way to not have to manage or regulate how you're feeling, or to try to run away from, avoid, or bury the everyday issues that you're facing with your wife, with your family, with your job, is a recipe for disaster.
Yes.
It might seem like it's working in the short term, but as Haisam mentioned, what are the longer term impacts of it? And a lot of people who have been through addiction can attest to exactly what I'm saying right now.
Yeah. And people like you mentioned, Khalid, about high functioning drug users,
professionals.
That's they might be managing it now, but what we know with cocaine, with any drug, is that you're eventually going to need more and more and more just to maintain. And at what cost? And eventually, what's going to happen? It's a recipe for disaster.
And ties into everything, even the cost of living. In particular for those that actually don't even go to a doctor, for example, and they just using marijuana or just for the sake of it, and then saying that it's a medication and stuff. With that's definitely a big no. Definitely a big no. If you have specific issues, go to a doctor. You'll be given a lot of different options. I'm pretty sure as first options. Similar to quitting smoking, right? The first option is combined nicotine replacement therapy with counseling, and then it goes to things like the medications that are available, also similar level, and then you've got some other little things that go on, and I think the RACGP or one of them. I don't want to misquote anything now, so I don't want to get into it. But for example, the with vaping, it's chucked at the bottom of the list. So you can't really jump up and say, I'm using vaping because it's there. It's at the bottom, absolute bottom of the list. Even if it's recommended. It's recommended as the final last, resort. After numerous tries of the others. I'm going to move on a little bit, inshallah, and I don't want to, keep you guys here and our listeners here too long. Let's move on a little bit, inshallah, and we will do a lot more related to AOD, inshallah, alcohol and other drugs. We'll do a lot more specifically. Let's move on, maybe our final topic, I think, for today, just related to youth identity, belonging, and contemporary pressures. So we'll start with, identity struggles that Muslim boys and young men are facing today. So we mentioned identity a couple times. Anything that comes to mind, from either of you at this point?
I think for me, it's the body dysmorphia. I'm seeing a lot of it. That to me is a big issue, and it's so easily accessible these days. The drugs, the supplements, and all that.
The peptides and
these are the lot of my friend told me this, and my brother's friend told me that, and
safe, and we can get it delivered from overseas.
4 years, and exactly. There's that insular circle of advice that gym people give to each other. That's creating a huge problem, because we're not only talking about physical changes to your body, talking about mental, psychological, neurological changes that happen chemically in your brain. We're taking these drugs. They have side effects. They have impacts. Yes, people say no, I wouldn't have side effects, and medication, changing your body's natural homeostatus is it comes with consequences, and the longer you do it, the more it's going to have significant issues. And you speak to anyone who's done steroids for a significant amount of years and they get older, they'll tell you, they'll look back, their body is deteriorating, their body has significant issues. But
Omar, you're a bit more in the youth space.
I guess, look, I got mainly two things to say, partly around young people, but also around parents especially within our community. Young people have a strong desire to feel belonging. They have a strong desire to be connected to something. I'm sure we can all remember when we were young, when we were teenagers, we were trying to figure out who we were. You know, who we were as Khalid, who I am as Haisam, who I am as Omar, but also as a Muslim, as a man, as a this and a that. And you start experimenting, you start looking for things that feel relatable. Ultimately, I think my point is that young men are going to find belonging somewhere. If it's not in healthy spaces, it's going to be in unhealthy spaces. That's really the bottom line. And unfortunately, a lot of these unhealthy spaces are popping up all over the social media, all over the web, all on our platforms. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, like, we just connect to that is young people don't need lectures. I think we've had enough talks. They've had enough lectures. They've had enough iman boosters. You know, you're 12 years old, 13 years old. You don't need to boost your iman. They don't need to be spoken to. They need role models. They need people that they can look to, men who are emotionally mature, understanding, who show proper leadership. Not a leadership that's about dominating them, about controlling them, about showing them how tough that they are. But it's a leadership about, come here, little bro, let me show you what life is like about. And let me hold that space for you, because it's going to be a rough journey. You know, you're going to be dealing with all things that you didn't even expect. And my other thing, which is to parents, is that as parents, we don't recognize the impacts of our behaviors on our children from day one. You mentioned, for example, your response to your son. Children are like sponges. You know, they see everything that you do, even the things you don't recognize that you're doing. So that intergenerational trauma, or that family conflict that you're trying to avoid, that you're trying to bury, that you're trying to ignore, the children absorb it. And they grow up and they learn, this is what it means to be an adult. This is what it means to be a man. And they replicate that when they become adults. So the message is really to parents, you know, myself first and foremost, is recognize that everything that you do is an example. It's something that you're setting your child up to do when they become adults in the future as well.
No, definitely. I mean, I'll add maybe quite a different perspective. Also, in my line of work, doing a bunch of work with different, you know, youth from different backgrounds, faiths, things like that. In terms of young Muslim men, the identity issue, yes, like, you know, it's everything that we've mentioned, but there's also, you know, how do I fit into the wider, you know, Australian community? They see the rise of the far right, you know, that's happening right now, the significant, you know, unprecedented increase in, you know, Islamophobia. You know, they've been seeing pretty much live stream genocide of, you know, fellow, you know, Muslims and Palestinians, you know, across the world. And then at the same time, they have to deal with, you know, people from all parts of the Australian community. And I think, you know, how they navigate that and how they deal with that, and, you know, who's there to actually, you know, help them navigate that and address that and make sure, you know, they've got the skill set to do that. I think that's a very big challenge that they're facing. 100%. And especially a lot of the kids, you know, one of two things, like they're either in, say, you know, independent or private, you know, Islamic schools, it's pretty closed off. In terms of who they're dealing with. That's right. Or if they're like in a public school, but it's Southwestern Sydney, it's very like similar, you know, they might have a little bit more experience, but at the same time, they're still not, you know, not like when you go into uni, for example, or you go jump into a trade and all of a sudden it's completely different, you know, surroundings and vibes over there. So,
but can I ask you that on that point, do you feel that as a result of that, because of the consequences of what's happening in the political climate and the world around us, the youth are holding on to their religion like a armor? Yes, it's becoming more like they're becoming more defensive about their religion. They feel like they have to always advocate for their faith. They have to protect their faith because they feel like they're always under attack.
There's two sides to it, really. There is that side, you know, for those that haven't really spoken to older role models. There's that side. Those that have spoken to other people, maybe they're the opposite. You know, they're of the perspective that, you know, we're tired. You know, as a community, it's happened to my older brother. It's happened to all the boys that are a bit, you know, in their 30s that have experienced this before. And, you know, it's the opposite. Like, I don't want to have to, you know, give any explanation to anyone. But yeah, so like, it's definitely brought out the issue of faith and identity to the forefront. And it's definitely you know, in some ways shed light on it.
Yeah.
And inshallah, it's a bit more, you know, positive that they actually have to address it, not wait till later on.
True.
But yeah, it's a mixed bag when it comes to
It
it.
is. Yeah.
My sorry about this, but my 2 cents on that question.
Yeah,
is
Tom.
the October 7 is Gen Z's 2000.
9/11.
Yeah, 9/11. Yeah, that is a good
The
point.
only difference is that they have a generation or two that helps guide them.
That's true.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
true.
which is the importance of role
That's
models.
a very good point.
And
Yeah.
you know, people that are over
Yeah.
whatever, over 25,
That's so
over
true.
30, over
Yeah.
35, you know, giving a bit back and being role
Yeah.
models to
But
these
we
youth.
have look the role models that we see now are the ones coming out of the Palestine Action Group, the protests. You know, the ones that the doctors and nurses that went overseas and they came back and they shared their stories and they gave their lectures. You know, we got the Muslim undertaker, mashallah. Like we see a rise in Islamic and healthy role models, but not enough.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, and
definitely
we definitely need access to daily like mentors, like day-to-day
Yeah,
mentors.
yes.
We don't need just you know, it's great that there's influencers, there's people that can go around giving talks, but at a grassroots level, like if there's, you know, pork eating park or whatever it is, and boys want to go and like, you know, chill out a little bit over there, you know, how many guys are going down and, you know, making sure that that safe space is safe, number one, and to an extent moderated, you know, without things going
Very true.
in a certain way. Okay, inshallah. I'll move on just a little bit, and you know, apologies. I know we spoke prior to this that we're going to speak about a lot more, but it just, you know, time really goes fast, inshallah, and we'll go into more depth in upcoming podcasts, inshallah. Let's go a little bit. So let's end it a little bit with an Islamic touch. So we'll look at Islamic teachings supporting emotional expression and vulnerability. You know, it's there.
Absolutely.
Like that's the start point.
That is.
It's definitely there. The way the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know, whether it was the grief he had, you know, over loved ones that he lost, whether it's the examples of the hadith that we listen to about him showing affection to the children, you know, even while praying, the grandchildren, the way he listened to others attentively, the way he sought like nasiha from companions, like from those around him. He sought that, like he's the prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he's still seeking that nasiha from those around him. You know, it's there in our religion. 100%. Like it's not something we're bringing in from the West, like trying to adapt, you know, our understanding of religion because of Western psychology. Like that's not it. Like people keep saying that all the time. It's not it. Like, you know, there's differences. There is differences between Western psychology and, you know, Islamic psychology. There's also some similarities, but there's nothing that says, you know, you don't go and access mental health services or don't show your emotions. Or very far off.
Well said. Very true. Very true. Wallah. And you know, like you said, wallah, it's something we need to normalize, and we take it for granted. You know, I find people that have, you know, come back to Islam more appreciative of the Islamic values than the ones who are born into it. You know, we take it for granted. But once again, it comes back to the circle, the influence, the group that you surround yourself with. If you surround yourself with non-Muslims, with people doing the wrong things, of course you're going to end up, you know, doing what they do. It comes back to come back to the mosque, come back to the shabab and the youth and the, you know, volunteer your time. If you have time, volunteer. These things are, you know, you give back to the community, but you also give, you know, you're also benefiting your soul. You know, you're helping others and you're helping yourself, and it's just about trying to stay on that path as much as we can, because we can easily forget it, especially in Western society, especially in Western work culture. We can slip. This is why Jum'ah is fard. You know, there's a reason why we have to go to
minimum the one time a week that you have to go in,
because of that reminder. We need that reminder. We need that influence. We need that support. But inshallah khair.
Inshallah. Like you said, Khalid, obviously the Prophet Muhammad is the ultimate and perfect role model for Muslim men, for Muslim boys to look up to. The Prophet Muhammad wasn't one type of man. He displayed the whole range of what it means to be a man. strength with gentleness, decisiveness with advice and consultation from those close to you, leadership but service to other people. You know, as men, we get very caught up in this idea of being a leader.
Yeah.
But this idea of being a leader of I'm right, I'm in control, I have the final say. Leadership is, again, it's an amana as well. You know, it's not something that you take, it's something that you earn. And you earn it by what you do, the choices that you make. I think it's really important for us as men to accept that, you know, the responsibility of leadership is a responsibility. It's not something that you can take. It's not something that you can take for granted either. And when you accept that it's an amana, something that you're entrusted to do, then all the people around you will benefit from that. Your wife, your children, your wider family, your community. But we need to understand that really at its heart.
Well said.
Okay, inshallah, to finish up, maybe in a minute or less, to both of you, same question. So what's the most important, or one of the most important messages you'd like Muslim men, you know, families, community leaders to take away from the discussion that we had today?
Be mindful of your thoughts. Like that would be a big one for me. Just be mindful of your thinking patterns. If you find yourself too negative, if you find yourself, you know, becoming more aggressive in your thoughts and your, you know, your wants, your needs, I don't want to say change it because it's not that simple, but you know what I mean. Be mindful of it, be aware of it, and address it. That's something. Please take away from. If you're going to take anything away from today, take that away, because it's where we start. Everything starts with our thoughts. So start by addressing it. Try to, you know, clear them. Try and make them a little bit more peaceful.
And Omar?
I think for our community, for Muslim men, for leaders, the takeaway is let's not wait for it to get to a crisis. Let's not wait for a Muslim man to be violent to his family or to murder his whole family before we get up and say, look, maybe there's an issue here.
Yeah.
Because it's something that happened very recently, for example.
Yes, very true.
We really need our community leaders, our mentors, our shuyukh, to be able to support men to speak up, to access help, to seek help. We need to normalize that within our community so that we don't continue to respond to crisis, because we are becoming more mature as a community. We can't be stuck in that kind of cycle of responding to a crisis. And at the end of all of this, what I'm trying to say is everything I'm saying is not about shaming Muslim men. It's not about trying to make you feel bad or make you feel worse. It's about supporting you to raise a standard. You know, and as a community together, we can all support each other to raise that standard so that ourselves, we can benefit, our wives, our children, our community can also benefit, inshallah.
Subhanallah. And, you know, subhanallah, we know there are services that are available. You know, we'd love for more services to be more culturally, religiously appropriate, you know, by the community, for the community. And, you know, in terms of psychologists, for example, I can attest, mashallah, there's a lot of, you know, Muslim and Arabic speaking and, you know, other languages, psychologists that are around. So it just takes a little bit of a search, inshallah.
That's right.
In terms of other services, you know, inshallah, as a community, we work towards them. In particular, alcohol and other drugs. Again, I like to say the good and the bad that comes with it. There are a lot of families that are asking for, you know, help. You know, unfortunately with us at this stage, as an organization, for example, community organization, we're not able to offer much apart from referrals. But we do know that the people asking for help are increasing. So that's already a very positive sign, inshallah. And the next step is, you know, how do we provide these services to the people? And how do we get more people to access or seek help, inshallah. Omar, Haisam, Jazakallah khair both for joining us tonight. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everyone. Thank you.